What does it mean to live an authentic life? It means to have integrity. It means to speak the truth. And it means to take stock and to look at the gifts that have been given to you. Being a teacher at this school for over the last 20 years, I've had the distinct privilege of watching students come into my classroom and at the end of the term walk out sure-footedly onto their path with a better idea of who they are or who they think they're going to be. And that's really important because in order to step into your authenticity, you have to understand what it means to be. What does that mean, to be? It means to sit, to be in the present, to not acknowledge the past nor the future, but to be in the moment. And it takes time, and it takes craft, and it takes silence. You've got to unplug from the matrix. You got to put your phones down. You got to get away from social media, and you need to get to know the person that you were born with. That's what it means to be. And as soon as you do that, you'll have a better understanding of what you need to do next in order to become authentic. When I was 6 years old, the two things that I loved best in the entire world were drawing and Halloween. I was a very artistically precocious child, and I could draw on anything with anything, and I did all the time. And aside from haunted houses and witches and ghosts and all the spooky things that we associate with Halloween, I liked the idea that I could wear a mask and I could be somebody else. Because when I was really little, I knew that I was different than everybody else, but I didn't understand what that meant. And I really didn't understand what that meant for a long time. But the realization was that I was gay. And that realization, when that hit me, that left some very uncomfortable years in grade school and early high school because I was perceived differently. I was alienated. I was thought of as being weak. I was the last picked for my team. And I hated passing periods for fear of what I might hear in the hallways. And I was called a lot of names. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And she was absolutely right. But back then, I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the gift to be able to see what it meant to be authentic. I didn't have any mentors. And so I basically just ran away from that part of myself, and I ran away for a very long time. Names and labels have lasting effects. They're catalysts, and they create different things inside of you. If you can learn to distinctly understand what these labels mean, then you can step into your own authenticity. And this is an assignment that I've learned to integrate with my students. So as a graphics teacher, it's important that my students understand typography, that they become very responsible users of type and of fonts. So I want them to be able to exercise that as a practice, but I also want them to understand who is the person using that technology. So I have them make a list of 20 different words, adjectives, or nouns in which they think they might connect to or identify as one of those labels. And they're powerfully transformative. My students are the first people in the world to identify their own flaws. And I praise them for that. And they also know what's great about them. And the labels will run the gamut of artistic and athletic and energetic. And they can also be negative, like sloppy, loud, boring, procrastinator. Yeah, we resonate with that one a lot, don't we? But the cool thing is that they own those labels. No one's given it to them. They own it. They know who they are. They've taken stock, and they have begun to be. That's what's important, is they've begun to be. So what happens after you have sat with yourself, and you've labeled yourself, and you have an idea of who it is that you're supposed to be? What does that mean? Well, the next thing you've got to do is you've got to believe. You have to step into a place of knowing that there's something out there waiting for you. And you don't have it yet. You know that it's possible, but you haven't gotten there yet. So what do? Well, you have to keep listening to yourself because the messages will come. So in my early 20s, I'm still not out of the closet yet, by the way, I met and started working with a shaman. Her name is TEDxRBHigh, and she was a professor at one of my colleges. And I absolutely became entranced with this idea of the fact that there was a world out there that we couldn't see, but that we could access if we needed to. And if you don't know what shamanism is, it's a practice you find across the globe. Indigenous cultures practice this. And there are people in their communities who have been called to serve humanity. And that means that they are intermediaries between the world that we see and the world that we don't. They're healers, they're psychological and spiritual counselors, and we need them. We need them. And so as I was working with her, she taught me about the different types of people that we have in our lives and how we define our authenticity. And she said we have 3 mirrors in our world. And the first mirror is the clear mirror. People in your life who are clear mirrors reflect back what you believe. They have the same likes and dislikes as you do, and they pretty much resonate with you. And clear mirrors can come and go in your lives. As people's likes and dislikes change, you're going to have friends that are coming into your life, and you'll see that they will go. There's no blame, there's no judgment, it just happens. But you look around, who are the people who are reflecting you right now? Those are your clear mirrors. Then you can have the projected mirror. And that is a person that really doesn't exist. It's a falsehood. It's a false self that you have created so that someone will see you differently because you don't want them to see your authentic self. And I see it all the time in high school. People sacrificing their authenticity, who they truly are, so that they'll be liked or that they'll be popular. And I try to tell them all the time, it's a waste of your time. Right? You're not helping anybody because you're lying to yourself. You're lying to someone else. You have to keep up with all of these lies. And eventually, it's all going to crumble down. And what are you left with? But nothing but fragments of a lie. So don't do that. So that was the first thing that she taught me about that, was that we have clear mirrors and we have projected mirrors. The third one are the smoking mirrors, the dark and cloudy mirrors, the people in our lives that we do not agree with, that we find dissonance with, the people that we don't like. And all of you have them in your lives. There's people that you just can't stand. The real truth about those dark mirrors is they're teaching you something about yourself you would rather not know. You're in denial about it. And if somebody gets on your nerves, look back at yourself. Is that what you do? Are you hiding that? Do you not like them because it's really something about yourself that you don't like? And if that's the case, then just admit it. And if it's not the case, and you just don't like them just because you don't like them, then that dissonance is going to move you away from that dark mirror, and you're going to find your clear mirrors. And if you're living in your world right now where you have no clear mirrors at all, that's fine. Sit and be with yourself and be your own mirror. Nothing wrong with that. So after working with her for a while, I also got another message. And that message, and again, this is inside of me, is that you need to come out, Paul. You're 25 now. The world is waiting for you. And everything that you have done up to this point will have been for nothing. And if you don't do this, if you don't come out and step into who you're supposed to be, you will not do what you're supposed to do. It was a clear, distinct message. And it frightened the hell out of me. And I told her. And I said, this is the message that I received. And she said, okay, well, what's holding you back? What are you afraid of? And that was it, fear. If you are afraid, you cannot expand. You can't learn, you can't grow. You have no ability to create anything at all if you're afraid. You are left in the present and you're stuck. We have only 2 things that we can do with fear, and that's react. And we can either flee or fight, our primal base instincts. But other than that, we can't really do anything if you're afraid. And so she said, well, what are you afraid of, Paul? And I said, well, I'm afraid that people aren't going to like me or that I'm going to be rejected. And she smirked very compassionately, and she smiled and laughed a little bit. And she said, well, you know, Paul, not everybody has to like you. And my projected mirror, the illusion that I created, shattered. And I was liberated. and I was able to reclaim that lost part of myself. Powerful. So again, I try to integrate this concept of belief to my students, and I created the Alchemy Studio. Right? It's a capstone assignment for my students. It's the very last thing that they do before they leave my class. And what I wanted to do was not so much imitate the purported transformation of base metals into gold by the medieval alchemists, but symbolically, metaphorically, I tell my students, you've been given a life. You've been given a base life, an empty slate. What are you going to do with it? And how are you going to craft your life and turn it into gold? And so in the Alchemy Studio, I have them choose 10 significant things in their life, 10 key moments in their life story that helps them become who they are at this moment. And I have them create an object that represents that so that they can create a space where they can actually see the transformation of their life. And the last object that I want them to create is their life goal. And that's going to be made out of gold, whatever that is. That they have something concrete to believe in. You take your life experiences and you integrate them, and then you learn to help someone with them. That's what it means. So I eventually did come out. Not a day after that conversation with my shaman Taya, I sat down with my sister, and out of nowhere, she's 5 years older than me, she says, "Tell me your secret." And I said, I don't think you want to know. I don't want to talk about it. I don't think you're ready. And she said, "Oh, I'm totally ready. I don't think you're ready to say it." So I did. I said, "I'm gay." And she said, "I know. I've always known, Paul. You're not any different now than you ever have been your whole life. So what's the big deal?" When you start listening to yourself, when you start listening to your truth, your world starts to coalesce. The pieces start to come together without any effort of yours whatsoever. You make one tiny little step and everything just happens. And a year later from that admission, I found myself teaching here. Right? I believed, then I became. To become, the word become is supposed to be there, but to become is not a destination. It is a constant state of unfolding, of stepping into who you're supposed to be. That's what becoming means. And you become every day you wake up because there's a day of possibilities waiting for you. But when you step into your authenticity, when you step into what you know you were meant to do, you become. You get past the barriers that are holding you back. Whatever gets in the way of holding you back is your work, whatever that may be. And you have the skills and the talent to walk through the gate confidently, without looking back, without fear, and without any thought of return. You step into the gates, to the unknown, into the cave, to face your dragon. Because if you don't, that fear is going to keep you exactly where you are. So you've got to conquer your fear and step into who you're supposed to be. So I did that. Right? And that message rang true. If you don't do this, if you don't come out, you are not going to do what you're supposed to do. And here I am 20 years later, a county teacher of the year, an advocate for equal rights for all my students, safe spaces in all of our schools, a co-advisor of our Gender and Sexuality Alliance, and watching my students, my LGBT population, come out of the shadows, shed their armor, and step into their brilliance far faster coming out of the closet now than I did. Because I believed in them, and I believed in myself. So who are your mirrors in your life? Who are the people that are reflecting a clear vision of you? Hang on to them and give them gratitude for helping you see who you're supposed to be. And look at your projected mirrors. What are you willing to let go of? What false self are you willing to sacrifice now because you know it's really not going to do you any good? And give gratitude to those people that are your dark mirrors because they're the greatest teachers. It's easy to talk to people who agree with us. It's much more challenging to talk to people who don't. A dear friend once said that to me. So in closing, I want you to think about this and look at your life journey. What labels and names have you been called? What would you put in your alchemy studio? And finally, What are you looking back in your life with? Try not to think of anything that has anything to do with regret, because regrets are a waste of time. We hear people say, oh, I should have done this. I should have done this. And it's like, you know what? You have to let go of that should have. Because if you did, then you wouldn't be the person you are right now. And that's who we've got to talk about. The person right now, because that's the person that's getting ready to step into the gate. When you have been, when you believed, when you become, that's when you come into your true power. So whatever makes you strange, whatever makes you odd, whatever makes you weird, that's an Anglo-Saxon word, by the way, meaning you have one foot in both worlds. Whatever makes you queer, whatever makes you different, that's what makes you unique. That is your power. That is your gift. You are meant to share that with people. You are meant to help people. Every adversity that you've ever overcome, you now have the skills and the gifts to help somebody else through a traumatic experience. What a fantastic thing to be a part of somebody's life, to ask for nothing, but just to be a part of it and to witness it. That's a miracle. And that's why I'm still teaching, because I know that I'm supposed to be here. And anybody that ever needs any help, I'm there for them, because I had people who were there for me. So that's it. Thank you.